what I wanted to get across in the book is, not just these epic stories, these amazing characters, but also just the real humanness and humanity and the quality, the sort of intimate quality of, what is our relationship with the, water and this element that can very easily kill us, but is so alluring, right? We all want to jump into it.
Welcome to the Löw Tide Böyz, a Swimrun Podcast. I'm Chip.
And I'm Chris, and this is episode 78 of the show. It's also episode 101 of total content, Chipper.
Including all the bonus gear talks.
Yep, a trailer, gear talk, all
the
that
trailer,
stuff.
too.
And we probably would have made an announcement at episode 100, but we didn't notice until we were recording this, so that's what it is. But I think fitting for episode 101, I think we have one of our best shows ever. And, if it's not one of the best, it might even be the best. This week we have Bonnie Tsui on the show. She's the author of Why We Swim, an amazing book about swimming, water, and life that we'll talk more about later. She's a New York Times contributor. She's a surfer. She's a Bay Area local, checking off all the boxes for us. Mm-hmm. We were totally honored and humbled that she agreed to come on our super niche podcast to talk basically with a couple of random dudes about her book. She was awesome to chat with, and we really can't wait to share this conversation with you. It was awesome.
Yes. But first, on to training updates. So we are continuing to ramp our training for Odyssey Swimrun Casco Bay. We're feeling pretty good about where the run is at, the swimming. I think we always feel like we're going to need to improve there, or there's always a lot of headroom there in the swimming area. But we're very happy with the time, progress, and consistency that we're putting in.
Definitely.
All in all, we had a pretty good week of training. Nice long swimrun practice, clocking in at getting close to 3 hours, 2:45 or something like that last weekend, with some longer zone 2 swims and fast running mixed in. Hashtag LFG.
Yeah.
Now, on to this week's shoutouts and combo feats of endurance.
Yeah, we're combining this week, and we're shouting out and giving our Feats of Endurance award to our friend Tobias Rupp from Germany. Toby crushed the Austria Extreme Triathlon over the weekend and finished in the top 15 now. Check the show notes because this thing looks ridiculous. But strong work, Toby. You're a beast. Amazing. So if you need some inspiration in your training life, you can be like Toby. Join our Löw Tide Böyz Strava Club and connect with fellow swimrunners as they train and race all over the world.
Yes. Now for This Week in Swimrun, powered by RaceID.com. Lots of swimrun news to share this week. First, the Envol Coaching's big battle is done.
Yay!
Woohoo! Congrats to the Löw Tide Böyz team, of course. Way to put in awesome work there. 24-hour challenge.
We didn't come in last.
Awesome. We did not come in last. And congrats to all the other swimrunners around the world that participated, and Envol for putting that on. Bonus congratulations to the Dutch swimrunners team who won the battle. Pretty sure they swimrun more than most people do in their entire lives. They were doing some serious multi-time.
I mean, Ellie from our Strava club, I think she's going to hit 50 swim runs in a month. And when I'm not talking for 20 minutes, she was at least doing 45 minutes, an hour each one. I mean,
that's impressive.
I'm impressed.
Way to be. The Attila Uto hype video is out, and Rasmus, our friend and former guest of the show, has produced yet another, dare I say, masterpiece? I will. Make sure to check out our Uto race recap episode with Helena and Usa if you haven't listened to that yet. So up next for Attila is their Inkenden event that's happening on July 10th through 11th. Check out our course preview episode we did last year to get all the details on that amazing course and location. Speaking of Attila, they announced this week that they are introducing the solo division for their World Series distance events. The purpose of the move is to open up races as to encourage growing of this sport that we love, swimrun. The solo racers will not be getting any ranking points, so they cannot qualify for the Attila World Championship, and there's been no change to the World Championship format where only teams may qualify.
Yeah, so this is an interesting move. I think if you're a purist, you're probably like, what the heck? But I mean, I kind of agree with Attila's move. It's like, hey, you want to open this up to people help grow the sport, all that stuff. And I mean, I think they're probably thinking what I'm thinking, which is if you do it solo, you're probably going to redouble your efforts to do it with a partner, because that's really where the magic is. And that's really kind of like the vibe of the sport, to do it as a team.
I totally agree with that. And I think the solo division will be very enticing to certain people that maybe would be, I don't know a partner or no one can train with me, but they don't have a solo division, so I'm just going to pass. This, they have that opportunity now to race it and sort of catch the bug.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the U.S. if some of these longer courses are going to have solo divisions now.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see who follows suit. So, Love Swimrun recently announced all their events for 2021, and they are open for registration. If you're ever in North Wales, we will definitely be sure to be checking out one of their events. The Holy Island Swimrun is on September 11th, and it looks particularly magical. So be sure to check that. Links in the show notes. In the category of random events that we learned about via Instagram,
it's a new category.
What?
It's a new category.
It's a new segment. Random things from Instagram. NZ Swimrun is hosting a 3-day swimrun camp in Waitemata, New Zealand on August 20 through 22. This is an all-inclusive camping experience, and it looks awesome. We don't know anything about that other than that if you're in the area, you definitely want to check that out. I mean, a swimrun camp sounds
fun.
Sounds like a pretty good time.
Sounds like summer camp for adults.
All-inclusive?
I guess it means like
free pina coladas and stuff?
Yeah, or whatever
they drink down there. Not Foster's. I know that. So that's it for this week. Feel free to email us or shoot us a DM on Instagram to tip us off with any events or swimrun news that you'd like for us to share with others on the show. Now, on to updates.
Yeah, so only a couple updates this week. Our latest episode of Gear Talk with the Swimrun Labs is out. We did our full review of the ARC Sports' latest opus, their new Orna X Swimrun wetsuit. The suit is totally worth the hype in our collective opinion. You can check that out on that show if you haven't already.
Check it out.
Finally, we know that we've been mentioning our Odyssey Swimrun discount a lot since we got it from Odyssey, but that's really because we love their events and we think that you will too. So use the code LOWTIDE15 to save $15 off your registration. And by the way, we heard from Odyssey that Casco Bay is 80% sold out. So if you're the type of person to wait until the last minute, then congratulate. Now's your time.
Now's the time.
Now it's your time. I wouldn't wait any longer to, and join us at the start line.
And at the finish line.
Yeah.
And at
the after hour party, which I think by next week we'll have it confirmed. So we'll have a location and stuff all sorted out.
Sweet. Now for this week's interview with Bonnie.
Well, what can we say about this interview? It might be your best work, but not because of anything that we did. No offense to Chipper or myself. Bonnie was an amazing guest.
Yes.
And we really loved chatting with her about her book, Why We Swim. We covered a lot of ground in this interview where she discussed what inspired the book, what blew her mind the most in her research for the book, and really so much more. Like, I feel like it's already been hyped up, so we think it's great. We hope that we're not, setting unreasonable expectations, but anyway, make sure you check out her book, Why We Swim. The new paperback edition is out now, but you can get it on Kindle. You can get, any format you want. Yeah. And, I think it was great. I don't know why she agreed to be on the show, but I'm really happy she did.
That she did.
And she was great to chat with. I mean, she was amazing. She's a total pro.
Super pro.
Super pro.
And a fellow swim lover.
Yeah.
Just like us.
And a surfer. I mean, the fact that she's a surfer, to me, that's like...
And she knew what swimrun was.
Yeah.
Bonus points across the board for Bonnie.
Yeah.
Gold stars.
Gold stars.
Way to go.
Enjoy, people. All right, so we're super stoked to have Bonnie Tsui on the show. She is the author of Why We Swim. She's a contributor for the New York Times, badass swimmer, fellow Bay Area native. Welcome to the show, Bonnie.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, guys.
So I'm sure that, when you write a book like Why We Swim, you're like, what I really want is to be on a super niche podcast about swimrun. So I
like to hit all the audiences.
Yeah, well,
no stone unturned.
Well, we've gotten several requests to try to interview you as we
no way.
Yeah, a couple people were like, oh, you got to check out this book, you should have Bonnie on. So we're like, hey, we're working on it. And here we go. We've delivered. So
well, what
really
I know
stoked.
about the sport of swim run is that it's growing rapidly. So that's
Yes.
my knowledge.
Yes, it is.
That's all you need to know. And that we are trying to be the gasoline on that fire.
Yeah, we're definitely trying to pour some gas on that. So let's talk about this amazing book. Really enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, as swim runners, we love swimming. We love open water. We feel the connection. We feel the magic of it. But what inspired you to write this book?
This is going to be, you might have some conflicting emotions about this because I wanted to write this book about swimming because there's so many books about running.
Yeah.
That's
and, I mean, on the more serious note, I really, there really were few books that I have found that really treated swimming with a kind of like a multidisciplinary, journalistic adventure, but also narrative, kind of approach to telling the story of swimming and humans' relationship with swimming. And I had not come across that myself. And of course, there are so many wonderful books about running, and I really took inspiration from, Chris McDougall's Born to Run, of course. And, he just has this really, not just great stories to tell about runners and races and just his own relationship with running, but, it's just a great yarn. There's great characters, and I wanted to do something like that for swimming. And because my relationship with the water is so lifelong and so devoted, but really it was an excuse to interrogate my own relationship with swimming over the years and how it had changed.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think we should just end the interview right there. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like writing a book like this, was it, and using the Born to Run example, Chris kind of put himself as a character in the story.
Yes.
And you did this as well. In many ways, this book was actually really personal. And it surprised me, the way the book started is so incredible, which we'll talk about later. But you really made this, like the thread that you weaved, was a very personal one. Was that intentional, or was that just kind of like develop as you were researching and started writing the book?
I really resisted that for a long time. I spent the better part of, several years kind of just collecting material and stories sort of on a back burner kind of way as I was just going about doing my regular journalism work. And as I started to write and kind of put the book proposal together, I realized that there had to be some kind of thread throughout the whole thing that made all of these interesting stories and characters make sense, and I realized that I had to be present in some way as a narrator, as a guide to all of this, which, ended up feeling really right. But it took a long time to figure out that was the way to do it, because I don't feel comfortable writing memoir per se. I'm not a person who I don't feel that I have such an extraordinary story about survival, like Gudlaug Friðþórsson, the Icelandic fisherman in the book, whose story opens the book, or, Kim Chambers, or, Coach Jay at the Baghdad Swim Club. And so I never felt like I should be one of those characters in the same way that maybe Chris did in Born to Run. But I ended up understanding that I could be the every person swimmer. I could be that person who really loves and interrogates and examines and is just a curious journalist, along for the ride on many of these adventures. And so it's how it shook out. It was something that I kind of resisted in the beginning, but people kept telling me, you have to be in there. You have to be in there to guide the reader along. And I eventually understood that and got comfortable with that idea because, just traditionally as a journalist, you're kind of told not to be in the story, but I also know that storytelling has been changing and evolving, and journalism has been changing and evolving towards this more personal, more, an acknowledgement that we are all humans in the stories we tell, and we actually all have points of view that can be really valuable.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, and I think I feel sometimes people have a natural inclination to think, oh, I'm not that exciting, or I don't have anything super cool to share with everyone, and I feel that that what you just mentioned there, and I think that's nice. The Icelandic fisherman story is so, I mean, it's just mind blowing to think how cold those waters were, and the I don't want to say the survival swim that they had to shore was just so impressive. And I heard you kind of share the story a little bit in more detail on Rich Roll's podcast a year or so ago when you were on there, but how I found it very interesting that he was kind of really sheltered in a little bit, and how you really had to foster and develop that kind of relationship. And now it seems that you two are fast friends, or became fast friends once that kind of started. Are you still in regular contact?
Yeah, we are. I would say that we were the slowest of friends.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in terms of we had a relationship from the beginning that was a pen pal relationship that lasted a year before we actually met. And, like I told Rich, I really didn't know until the minute that I saw him by his truck when we met on the island of Heimaey in Iceland that he was going to meet with me. I just really, I don't know. He has had such a, such a particular experience with his life and fame and all this media attention after, the shipwreck that resulted in him becoming famous and him being the sole survivor. And I think that that's a really delicate situation. I wanted to really respect that. And so I guess I never expected him I never allowed myself to expect that he really would meet with me, I guess. Even though we had, we'd been communicating and writing, notes back and forth for the better part of a year. I don't know. And I think that's a good way to be, because you then figure out other ways to tell the story, and then also understand like why this person is important to you, and why is this person so important to other people? What does this person mean to the country of Iceland? What does he mean to a country in which many people have drowned, over the course of history? It is a history, a seafaring history of lives lost at sea. So what does it mean that this one guy made it and told the tale of what happened? I guess that was really what then it made me think really hard about what swimming means to Icelandic culture and history, and what being a survivor is, and what resilience is, and what's, when you're that person, what that means too, right? Because that's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting way to put it. I mean, I've been practicing his name, Gudlugur Fridhorsen. Is that even close?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I'm
We're
notorious for the show for
great.
butchering, especially like Swedish names. I'm just terrible. I have to apologize to the entire country every week, basically. But but Gudlugur, he feels like he's like at once just like a super cool, chill guy, but then at the same time like this total badass that yes, he's long removed from this epic survivor story, but did he still kind of have that presence when you met with him, where he was this like really nice guy? You mentioned in the book that he was like really cool with your kids and stuff. But did you feel like, oh man, yeah, this guy could totally survive like a 7-hour freezing cold water? He is.
Swim? I mean, he's just this. Yeah. Yes, he has this gravity to him, and and he's someone who's also very funny. He's a very dry wit, and is a funny guy, and has deep relationships in his community, and and they protect him. This small town, a small island in a very small country, and yet he has such outsized influence, right? And but he has a life, he has a life that's completely separate. And at the same time, I remember visiting his home for the first time, and, I was having breakfast with him and his wife, Maria. And, we were just chatting about, just regular things, nothing swimming related or accident related or anything like that. And then he kind of brings me into his study, and in his study is all of these things on the wall that are mementos, awards, or I don't remember if there were news clippings exactly. It wasn't quite like that, but there was a frame. It was more like photos or other things like that. There were not a lot of them, but just some select things. And there was this picture on the wall. I mentioned this in the book. It's a framed piece of art by his grandson, who at the time was really young. And his grandson had made this painting of him, of Löw, Goodlooker, as this like dark figure in the ocean, and a red boat and a blue sea. And it was just like, that just hit me so hard, like in the chest, just like,
yeah,
oh my God, like this is this part of this person's life and history and past, and it's still there.
Yeah.
But it's like this, in this kind of almost incredibly everyday, memories, relationships, people, in that kind of a way, not in a like Johnny Carson or, whatever BBC News story. It's not like that. It was just like something about the everyday objectness of it really hit me. And I think that's why I put it in the book, because I just thought, this is this guy's life. This is not just a story.
Yeah. Yeah. You go to anyone's house that has kids, and there's littered with drawings on the fridge and posted up. I know our fridge is overflowing. We have to find some sort of a dish, maybe buy a new fridge to put all the new
You have to
art
edit.
on.
You have to be very ruthless in your editing.
Yeah. So it's just such a relatable thing maybe that you saw, and it kind of really tied this whole piece together, and it even it sounds like his grandson saw him as this sort of really influential figure still, or saw the impact that he had on the whole country.
Yeah. And then also he's just grandpa, he's his grandfather, and like they visit, every once in a while, and they stay with, it's like this. Yeah. So it just, I think what I wanted to get across in the book is, not just these epic stories, these amazing characters, but also just the real humanness and humanity and the quality, the sort of intimate quality of, what is our relationship with the water and this element that can very easily kill us, but is so alluring, right? We all want to jump into it. We all want to do it. Like there's something so attractive about it. You see little babies who know nothing, and they're just kind of like, "Ooh, what's that?" It's just so mesmerizing, right? Kids in the bath, kids by the edge of the pool. That's why you have to protect them from the pool before they know how to swim. And that's always there, but there's always that hazard too, which is, I found that tension really compelling.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like in Swimrun, like that line of being on land and being in the ocean, like what makes it really amazing for people that think it's amazing. I think one of the things is this connection with nature where, that line is gone. Essentially, you run to the edge of the water and you just keep going.
Yeah.
You transition right in and you get out and you do it again. Maybe you do that over 10 islands or something.
It's so crazy.
But I wanted to ask you, writing this book, you captured some really incredible stories, and reading it, I was like, getting my mind blown pretty much like every 14 pages or something. And I was wondering, like, what blew your mind the most as you were researching and writing the book? Like, what was the thing that you were just like, oh my God, this is just crazy?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. I mean, obviously a story like Good Looker for Thorson's was,
sure.
I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I felt that, and there were times when I thought, like, is this really a story about swimming that, is meaningful for what I want to do? Like, this is early days, but, eventually I think that I always think that if you can't stop thinking about something, then it means that you should write something about it, for me anyway. Otherwise,
that's a pro tip right there for
haunting
aspiring authors that listening right now.
Get it out of your head somehow. Oh gosh, I really like. I think Japan, right? We have to talk about Japan. We have to talk about samurai swimming and Nihoneho and all that. I think that to think of swimming in different ways that we were accustomed to, so we're all accustomed to thinking about swimming in terms of speed and distance, right? And what was really cool about learning about samurai swimming, these like, centuries old schools and philosophies of swimming that developed with the samurai clans in feudal Japan, like what was cool about learning about that practice, and basically it's this Japanese swimming martial art, is that those techniques and strokes and ways of thinking about swimming philosophies are not at all about the fastest person. Mm-hmm. It's about what is this stroke useful for? So it's about utility, and it's also about efficiency. And then, eventually it's about like grace and beauty and like doing it right, so you think about any martial art now, it's, there's a practice that's like a whole body, mind body philosophy, often when you go to a studio, martial arts studio, you think about like judo or kendo or karate, and you have a master, you go through the forms and you kind of move up, and there are different tests that you have that kind of, that you can progress by getting belts, and in the Japanese swimming martial art, it's that you can progress, you study under a master, you can progress through, usually it's like years of study, and you learn these different strokes depending on, what school of swimming that was sort of geographically based. It was like, okay, if you study from this school that kind of originated near the ocean, then you would learn these particular strokes that are good for like cutting through the force of a breaking wave when you're trying to get out, and like maybe you can see above the surf to the enemy that's approaching, or you can tread water in a very quiet way, or you can push your body out of the water and into a boat, just with the force of your own propulsion, like stuff like that, where it's not about all of the things that we here in America are, and just sort of this modern way of thinking of swimming, this Western way of thinking of swimming, and now international, like through international competition, like sort of Olympics as we know it is based on speed, right? It's based on, who's the fastest to get from point A to point B, or do a certain distance in the pool. And so it was just interesting to kind of wrap my head around the function of swimming that was developed as a martial art, actually using it in times of war, and then having it move into a martial art that's like a practice now that is like about, fine tuning your mind and your body to do these different skills. Like it just was, and that really did blow my mind, because it was just, I wanted to think about, I had never thought about swimming in that way before. I was totally trained up as like a swim team swimmer, from when I was a little kid. And so when I stopped swimming on a swim team, I had to kind of relearn how to just swim for fun or for exercise, or, and then I started doing like triathlons and just kind of like open water swimming, and then, but that's still kind of competitive, in a way that we understand it. And Nihon Eho is just not like that.
That's crazy. I mean, I remember remember the moment I was reading the book in bed next to my wife, and I just look over to her and I'm like, did you know there's martial arts Japanese samurai swimming? She was like, huh?
Well, it's hard, because you're kind of like, well, what could that possibly look like? And then when someone explains it to you, you're like, oh, this is totally not anything I ever imagined.
But it kind of makes sense that it would exist. Like, why wouldn't you have some overly specialized, if you're a warrior, warrior country, warrior class, like how do you optimize, fighting in the water or in that element. Like you
think or
that they would do it.
Doing certain things underwater. There's some I think there are some videos or like Navy SEAL training things that have to do with techniques that are used in Nihon-Eiho, and so there's some parallel drawn there too. I don't know where the SEAL techniques originated from in terms of like where people who are training soldiers will get those from, but I mean there are some remarkable parallels or similarities between certain things, and of course that totally makes sense. It's like, how do you transition? I mean, this is totally Swimrun too. How do you transition from land to sea and back again, in an efficient, powerful way that emphasizes survival and success.
And instead of a samurai sword, we have
giant
pull
buoys and cool wetsuits.
Exactly. You're not pulling weapons, but you are pulling, buoys.
So, absolutely. You touched a little bit about the competitiveness that is seemingly woven into the fabric of swimming from, being a lifelong swimmer yourself. Almost from the second that you can kind of swim without your parents holding on to you and catching you, it's like, okay, let's get you on the clock and let's get some freestyle or, whatever stroke work going. It feels a little bit about that's the only way that people know how to kind of really approach swimming other than the 4th of July barbecue, let's lounge in the pool kind of thing. Do you feel like the competitiveness is overdone a touch on swimming? And if potentially, if that was kind of dialed back to being more, if swimming was being more of like, here's a great skill to have in life and a great way to just get out and enjoy nature, and it doesn't have to be competitive, do you feel that would bring a little bit more accessibility to the sport of swimming?
I really do. And I hadn't thought about that that much until I kind of explored English swimming culture a little bit more, because the the British are so into swimming. They are really great swimmers, and their whole, wild swimming, their equivalent of open water swimming, they call it wild swimming. And that was kind of a vogue that a sort of new wave of that happened with the publication of this book. I don't know if you both are familiar with this book called Waterlog by Roger Deakin. And that was published in 1999 originally in the UK, and was just published here in the US last month.
Oh, wow.
For the first time. It was like 25 years or 20 years. I think it was 96. Sorry, I'm losing my dates here, but it was in the late 90s that it was published there, and it was like almost instantly this like it became, it was like, it has become over the years this like nature writing classic in the UK, and it inspired these like generation of swimmers who then took to the wild in England. And it was like, because people did not, there's a whole like right to roam thing in England where you can walk across people's property, to like when you're hiking or walking, like there's a whole walking culture. And he kind of wanted to do that for swimming because he was a big swimmer, but he wasn't like a big, he wasn't an Olympic athlete or anything like that. He was, just this regular guy who enjoyed getting into moats or streams or rivers and just crossing and understanding the landscape or the waterscape in that way. And actually, I kind of think about him as a swim runner as well, because he would go hiking with this pack, light pack with his whatever he needed in there, and he would kind of figure out where to put it and swim, and then swim back, kind of like get in somewhere and swim back to it, or try to figure out some route, like it was like route mapping. I highly recommend this book. It's such a beautiful
I while you were talking,
it's on the Amazon wish list now.
I literally just bought it while you were talking.
Did you get me a copy on that one?
You can
Kindle?
you can borrow mine.
Full disclosure, I wrote the introduction to the US edition.
Oh, great. Nice. Awesome.
But it is such a wonderful, but to answer your question about, do I think there is undue emphasis on the competition aspect that kind of puts people off from swimming? because they feel intimidated? Absolutely. And so what I was saying, why I pointed out waterlog and the, British swimmers in general, is that they don't seem to have that preoccupation as much as we do with the, I just think that it's more of a convention to swim there just for fun, like that. You don't have to be this, you can have a regular practice of swimming, going to the pond or going to wherever this natural body of water near you and swimming every morning. That could be a regular practice, but it doesn't have to be this thing where you're putting in like 3,000 yards every morning. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. What's your split pace? Like,
doesn't it's not, much. And I have to say that I really have come to, there's still a part of my brain that's always like, on the clock, but I try not to be sometimes. I think surfing helps me to do that. Surfing helps me to, because so many times you're out there and you'll never, it's not like you have documented you can document your surf, with Surf Watch or whatever. Yeah. And some, apps and things, but much of the time you won't be able to do that. And that's good. You shouldn't, and so that, aspect of like the undocumented life or the unmeasured life or the unmetric, don't get yourself away from the metrics of performance, I think really then allows your brain to rest and just enjoy whatever it is that you're doing. And I think water and swimming is really great for that, because most people who are in the pool are not listening to things or, even though there are things now that work a little bit better than, bone conduction devices used to. I tried that once and I was just like, this is so stupid. Why am I doing this? To listen to music when I was swimming.
Yeah. I always think swimming is like black line therapy. It's like you actually
totally.
Yeah. Time to get in the head. I agree with you there about the competitive stuff. And, I grew up very competitive and played competitive sports my whole life. And I was always that guy who was, hey, if your workout wasn't on Strava, it didn't count in my book.
Right.
Like, if you did a run and it wasn't, I can't look at the file or what the elevation stats or your heart rate was. Yeah. It didn't happen in my book. And I've definitely adjusted and changed my perception on how I view stuff. And it definitely has exposed me and opened up this whole new world of swimming. And, when we would go to aquatic park and I would put on my triathlon suit and, okay, let me see how fast I can do a buoy line. And I would swim really fast. I would swim by the people in the dolphin club or doing the no wetsuit. I'm like, what are they even doing in the water if they're not trying to go as fast as they can?
Right. And to them, they're like, I'm doing this thing that makes me feel alive and amazing every morning. That's why I'm doing it.
Yeah, and they're also low key
either.
And they're low
and it's
key
not on Strava.
Yeah.
And guess what? It did happen because you saw them being naked out there.
Yeah, they're definitely low key judging you for wearing a wetsuit.
That's true.
Oh yeah.
So speaking about pools and pool access, there was a part of the book that I thought was just like really important that. Again, it was one of those moments in the book, like as you're writing it, it makes sense to me. It's like, oh yeah, of course, that's a totally rational explanation when you're talking about sort of the history of public pools in America and how that essentially is just yet another personification of what you could call, systemic race or, systemic or, structural racism, where it's like, of course, black and brown kids are the ones that are left behind. But I was wondering, in your mind, besides having like a truckload of money that you could throw into invest into public pools, what do you think needs to happen to kind of close that disparity in sort of access to pools, and specifically for, for minority and black and brown kids to be able to?
Yeah, so one thing, I think that, I have been thinking about this a lot, how, especially in the pandemic, so many pools closed, and the pools that didn't reopen are so often the public community or municipal pools, the ones that are just operating at a deficit anyway, like no matter what. Actually, what I learned, I did a story for the New York Times last summer because there were some pools that were reopening And I wanted to know how they were doing it, right? So I wanted to kind of see how that was happening and sort of how people were feeling about safety and all that. And there's a pool in El Cerrito, the aquatic center there. And, that pool is usually in the summer, like so busy, like morning till night, like, there's swim team, there's classes, there's camps, there's like people just coming and having a birthday party. There's people who's like, there's a slide and there's a kiddie pool and there's there's a lap pool and there's just like a little water feature park. And so it's a very well loved in the community and a very, diverse crowds of people. And when I went there for the reopening, it was so quiet. It was like, you got like 10 people that can swim at a time. It was like, wow. Masked. And it was so sad because like everything was roped off and like only 10 people could swim at a time, one person per lane. And actually they still haven't reopened hopefully to the public yet. Oh. But just that the contrast of that, to the sort of normal usage of a popular, community pool like that, and to talk to the people who are, directing, who are the aquatics directors, and understanding that like in a regular year when they're taking in all this revenue from people coming in, they still are so often operating at a deficit. And so that said to me that so many of these pools are just never going to reopen. We're not going to reopen for some time. And so that just limits more and more and more and more. Of course, where those communities where the pools are not going to reopen is oftentimes the most underserved communities. And that just made me just so sad. And so I was thinking, okay, we're already struggling to keep the pools that we have open. And then there's, the issues of drought and there's issues of just like, where is the money going to come from? And I think about it how in other countries that the public school education, universal public school education includes swimming lessons, just like however it is that you get the kids to the pool or you get them somewhere where you're teaching them how to swim, at least the basics. Mm-hmm. And I thought about then, I've been thinking a lot about this whole, how the English swim, right? Just kind of using bodies of water. And that's something that, you wouldn't just get into like a creek here, you don't normally, you don't do that because you're kind of like, oh, what's in there? And there's this concern about it being clean or not.
It's like I'm going to get Giardia.
Yeah, you'll get Giardia. What's the runoff, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that's a concern, but most of the time it's really not. And when I was swimming, when all the pools were closed and I started to swim in Richmond at Keller Cove, this was a year ago in April, there was like always they monitored the water quality there, and sometimes there would be, extra bacterial runoff from somewhere. And, but you kind of just like, you know, the conditions, the spot, and you kind of go where the water is moving. And I just think that there's certainly a fear. And I talked to a lot of people when I would be going down there to swim, because a lot of people would go down to this little beach to walk along the water, or because it's kind of partly, it's kind of off. It's by the Richmond Plunge, and it's sort of off of like this busy road. And so it's kind of like people see it, but they don't necessarily think to get in the water. They'll walk by it. There's a park, but I was asked often about like, what's the water like? What's it like to swim out there? Like good for you kind of thing. And more people, of course, started to swim out there because they had no other choice, and then realized that they loved being out there. But it has to do with like education and like just, making it known, like, okay, how do you swim safely here? But also maybe there could be, regular swimming lessons held there, for as part of gym class or something. I just, and that demands, not a body of water, but like, okay, you could get a transportation, some kind of bus or something where you would go, twice a week with like your class, and you got to do that for like a semester. I think that there are ways around it. It just does take some imagination though.
Yeah, and I guess will.
And will. Yeah.
Is
this important? Is this a priority for you?
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly I think it is.
Well, we
agree with you. Yeah, and I feel that during the kind of COVID lockdown, we were fortunate enough to have access to seemingly the only lap pool open in Northern California was in Petaluma.
Oh wow!
And so
yeah, 'cause it was like outdoor pool.
It was an outdoor pool.
They came up with a reservation system, which is the only thing in COVID that I hope remains, because being able to have a time slot to have a
it is really nice.
That's really nice. Yeah, we had people coming from Berkeley, we were told, to swim in that pool and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was this big, kind of return, like you said, the wild swimming. People just out of pure being forced to not be able to swim indoors went out to the water, and I feel that it was really great for the open water, the wild swim movement. It really exposed people to the beauty of the water. And I think Chris and I, we were on a run this morning, and we were talking about there's this concept in Swimrun called the Swimrun flow. And that's sort of that you have this really deep connection with nature when you're doing a swim run with you and your partner, and you're running through nature, and you're just taking on what nature throws at you. If the trail goes this way, that's the way you're going. And like Chris said earlier, if you reach the water, hop right in and swim across and get to the next trail that you can go to. And I think that's just a lot of it has to do with the sort of, I guess the water is the big draw there. And I've found myself personally in the last year, we've been doing a lot more swimming, really embracing and looking forward to the open water swims, as opposed to I was the guy who would sit in there and complain for 15 minutes about how cold it is in aquatic park, and can we wait a little bit longer so I can take another pee in my wetsuit so we can go out there and I could be nice and somewhat warm. But a lot of people are feeling that same way, and I hope that's something that sticks around.
Yeah, and Bonnie, you should be very proud of Chipper, because he's come a very long way.
I had a lot of personal growth.
We would go to aquatic park and get dressed, and then we'd always have to factor an extra 10 minutes to get Chipper to be like,
to get my will
all right,
up.
Let's go.
I mean, it does take some time. You need to get used to it and adapt to it, but also, how awesome is it that you can adapt to it? Now you're a whole new person. You're a whole new swimmer. You can do all of this with so much more ease and comfort than you did before. And I just got all these great letters over the last year about people who had taken up open water swimming and got a buddy and got a wetsuit and nice. or started up swimming again where they hadn't swum in years, right? And thought, okay, I that's what's available to me. I will go into that lake, even though it's a little bit colder than I would like, but it feels so good. Like I love that. And certainly that's not something that I expected
right.
What happened with this book, but because of the circumstances in which the book came out, suddenly, I got to have that, call and response from people who read the book and then did that. And I have to tell you, it makes me so happy. It's so
absolutely.
wonderful.
I mean, I'll bet. I mean, I think, one of my questions to ask you was sort of, now that the book is out, it's in paperback, which is amazing. So everyone go buy it. We're going to plug this again at the end of the show, but
link in the show notes.
What's been, I mean, you write this awesome book. Obviously any author wants to write a great book that people are going to love and enjoy. Right. And you did that, with this book. And just like you said, you're getting all these folks writing to you and letting you know how much they love the book. I mean, has that exceeded your expectations? Like what were your expectations for this book, and sort of what's the reality that you're in now?
I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know how many other writers besides our mutual friend Adam Skolnick, but I think writers typically try to keep their expectations as low and in the basement as possible so they don't get disappointed. Well, especially if it's a book, right? I mean, you spend years working on a book, you put the book out in the world, you have no control over the circumstance. I mean, this is COVID was like the most insane example of that. Where, the month before my book was coming out and we had this whole national tour, travel, planned. It was all the schedule. My year was looking insane.
Yeah.
And then like the month before, the entire world shuts down.
Wow.
And I thought,
It's like, what a buzzkill, huh?
That's really sad. What do we do now? I mean, just everyone. I mean, I was part of this authors group called Lockdown Literature, where everyone just kind of got together and was like, oh, because our books were all coming out. And then everyone said, what the heck are we going to do about this? And, of course, so many vital and important and scary things were going on that we had to be cared about, including our family, and other loved ones, like health and personal safety. But also, give ourselves a little bit of a, tiniest violin in the world kind of thing. Like, it was really sad to feel that all the work and in many cases, like work that was not that you want it, you can't hope, you can't really expect, right, that it would be like career defining or, life changing or whatever, but you do hope that something good will come of this time and this work that you put into, something for so many years, right? And so for me, I had thoughts of like, oh, I just want to be able to connect with, I wanted the book to be for swimmers, and it obviously is, but I also wanted to reach people who did not think of themselves as swimmers, and that was really important to me. And I think that really did happen. And my favorite letters to get are the ones where people are like, the first thing they say is, dear Ms. Tsui, I'm not a swimmer, but, X, Y, Z. Or I didn't think I was going to like this book, but which people, I'm like, yes, that's what I do. That's like the highest compliment, like that I exceeded their expectations going into something and surprised them, which is, that's fun. That's a nice feeling.
Yeah. I think on a side note, I think it's really funny how many people like don't identify as something even though they can do it. Like there's a lot of people who's like, oh, I'm not a runner. I just run like 3 miles every day, but I don't consider myself a runner. Or like, oh, like my wife, for example, she says that she doesn't know how to swim. She perfectly knows how to swim just fine.
Yes.
She just, she's not going to sign up for a triathlon or anything, but she knows how to swim. But in her mind, because she's, I don't know, just doesn't think she's any good or doesn't identify as a swimmer, she thinks that she can't do it, which I think this book really does a good job of, just kind of inspiring people. I think, we haven't even talked about, Kim Chambers, who's just like this. I mean,
she's so badass.
There's documentaries about her. She's a total badass. I mean, her story, I think there's a documentary of hers that's on Amazon Prime right now that people can check out. I'm forgetting the name of it, but
Kim Swims.
There you go.
And it's just, I mean, I thought it was interesting that she played an important role in this book. I think next to you, she was the other character that was kind of going along in the story with you. Do you still have a relationship with her? Do you still like go swimming with her and stuff?
I haven't gone swimming with her in a while. I actually haven't seen her in person during pandemic, but we've done a couple of events together for Why We Swim, and we've talked and texted. But she's doing well, which I'm always so glad to hear, because she has really like been through the ringer, in all kinds of ways. And so I am always really happy to hear and know that she's still swimming. You'll probably see her out there one of these days.
Yeah.
Still at the club, still swimming. I think that when you were talking about your wife, not thinking of herself as a swimmer, I mean, what I wanted to really emphasize with the book is that how good the water feels. And so if you know how to swim, it is such relief to get in the water, especially in these times, to swim around for 20 minutes and feel amazing afterwards. You don't have to be doing it for, 2 hours fighting the tide shift in aquatic park. You don't have to do that if that's not your what you want to do. And you can swim for 20 minutes, along the shoreline, or, in a protected cove somewhere. And that feels good, like to look at the birds and kind of like think your thoughts and like stare at the sky, or just float there for a little bit. I feel even more acutely attuned to that because I broke two of my ribs about 9 weeks ago.
Oh my goodness.
Surfing.
Ooh,
and I just landed on my rail and just broke two ribs, and I just thought,
I think I just broke a rib. You telling that story.
I'm trying to take a deep breath.
Let me tell you, I do not recommend it. It is so horrendously painful.
Yeah, you probably got the wind knocked out of you.
I'm finally back to swimming, and I started surfing again last week, but I came back. I just was like not used to, I think anyone who's an athlete is, used to their bodies performing in a certain way. And if you're lucky enough to not have been severely injured, during any course of your life or practicing your sport, you're very lucky. But, eventually, something will catch up to you. And in this case, it was my surfboard rail. But I just had not felt this completely debilitated in a really, 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 really long time. Last time that happened to me was when I tore my ACL, but that was like 15 years ago. So I've had 15 good years of not experiencing,
it's a good run
of my body doing what I want. I got to do what I wanted to do. Right. And this was the first time in like 16 years where I was like, oh my God, I can't even get in and out of bed. It was so terrible. Like, you don't realize all the tiny muscles that you need to engage to just kind of like scooch over in bed. And then when they pull on your broken, jagged ends of your ribs, you're brought to another plane of existence that you should never be.
Yeah, or you have to sneeze.
Oh my God. I tried not to sneeze for like a month.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Well, the thing is, they want you to do it. They want you to cough. They want you to breathe deeply. They don't tell you to tape your ribs anymore, because the biggest risk, actually, this is something I learned, is that you can get pneumonia or lung infection from not breathing deeply, because it hurts so much to do that they don't want you to tape your ribs.
Oh, wow.
Because then you won't take a deep breath. This is all pro tips for people.
Lots of knowledge bombs today.
Yeah, very disparate.
May or may not break their ribs in the future. I hope that never happens to you.
So I have, we've kept you here for a while. We really appreciate you taking the time, but I have to ask you, is there a sequel of this book coming out? Is there going to be like Son of Why We Swim or Why We Swim 2? Because it seems like the stories that you found are so amazing that there has to be more of them, right?
That's very flattering. Thank you for asking that. There were lots of stories, but I got to do something a little different, I think. I'm still working on what that is. Mm-hmm. I actually have been kind of poking around and researching a new book, but I think if this all pans out, you will find it interesting as well. So
sure we will.
Okay.
I'm sure we will.
Color me intrigued.
Okay.
I'm here for it. So don't forget to go pick up Why We Swim anywhere that you get a book.
You can listen to
Amazon's
it.
a good place. Kindle, audiobook, all that good stuff. Go to Bonnie's site as well. All those good links will be in the show notes. And Bonnie, we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us about your book, about just how magical the water is.
Yeah. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we'll see you around. We'll probably bump into an aquatic park sometime. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Löw Tide Böyz, a Swimrun podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast and leave a review on iTunes if you're so inclined.
You can also sign up for a newsletter at lowtideboyz.com. That's boys with a Z. And check out our meme page at The Löw Tide Böyz on Instagram. If you have any questions or suggestions for the show, drop us an email at lowtideboyz@gmail.com.
We'd like to thank Writing Easy Records for our show music, and of course our wives for their support and tolerance of our swimrun activities, hobbies, and other bullshit we do.
Finally, you can support our efforts on Patreon. Until next time, get out there and go for a swim.
And then a run.
And then another swim.
Then another run.
And then another swim.
and then run to the finish line and just keep going until you're done.
Yes, or
until
run
you
to
cross the finish line.
or run to the car,
or run to your car
somewhere. Just keep running.
Peace.
Only happiness. I'm about to